Hello.
Hello. Hi everyone. My name is John Locke.
And I'm Nich Angell.
And welcome to the Heavenly Chord Director's Commentary.
Indeed.
Which is very exciting. We've been kind of trying to work out the logistics of getting together and sitting down in the same room so we can do this for a while, and it finally happened.
Absolutely.
So we're taking comics into the next dimension. We're adding sound. We're adding our melodious voices.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
as the co-directors of the project.
Yeah, and so we will be talking you through our little project, which started as a very crazy random idea and on Twitter of all places, and spiraled into something which I don't think it's an exaggeration to say has been genuinely life-changing.
Absolutely.
For both of us.
Yeah, it's led to a lot more than we thought it would do. At first it was just going to be a sort of daft spin-off where both of our sort of worlds collided, and it's grown into something that means a lot more than just it, and also for us as well. Yeah,
and I think we always had aspirations to do really big kind of Marvel DC-esque storytelling.
Yeah, multiversal crossover stuff.
But we were always like, we have a little guy.
Yeah,
you know, it's
exactly. Just indie creators. Like, how are we meant to do that?
Just making random comics, and like we kind of thought, well, like we want to do this. Like, why can't we just dive into it?
And I think the beautiful thing is, because we're both creators who are focused on world production, world creation, that we realised, well, we actually do have two like independent worlds and mythologies, and so why are we any different to like Marvel and DC, who also have worlds that are full of their own colourful characters? We're smaller and we self-publish our stuff and we go to conventions and we wing it from a table, but we also do have these worlds and they're just as big as theirs, so bring it on.
And I think that's certainly one of like the most humbling and awesome things about like making our comics, and I imagine we both had a similar experience here. It's the fact that people do seem to get behind our stuff, and that has been probably the most amazing experience about the whole thing. And like,
it really has.
And you talked about like the fact we're both trying to world build, and people seem to dig that. Like they're like, oh hey, like, I know that character. I know that character.
Yeah, getting on board with aspects of our mythology, like you sort of like, for me, think about what clef you might be part of, and and people dressing up as Jack Fortune at Halloween parties.
Yeah, which is pretty awesome. Yeah,
I like that. Yeah, that's cool.
So, I guess if you're listening to this, you're probably holding a copy of the Heavenly Chord graphic novel. We would hope.
Might be a bit tricky to follow it otherwise.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you don't have a copy in front of you, maybe you'd like to buy one.
Or go steal one.
Don't steal one. That would not be good. No. But yeah, the way it's going to work is, because we were chatting about this earlier, and we don't think there have been a massive amount of comic directors' commentaries
Certainly
before.
Not one that I've read before.
So consider this, your really cool freebie podcast, if you will, to listen to while enjoying the book. And we have the book in front of us as well, and we will give you a little heads up to let you know that when we're turning a page, and we're just going to read through the book together with you, our invisible listener and reader, and we're just going to talk about what was going on behind the scenes and what we were thinking about when we made this kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And maybe like what certain things mean to us and the greater world we're trying to build.
Absolutely. Couldn't have put it better myself. And you are the writer though, so I'd expect that.
Well, yeah, I mean, this isn't really your element, is it? Just words.
I'm drawing right now.
Yeah, Nick, damn it.
Can't you see it, listeners?
It's compulsive, yeah. So, I mean, just to get things started, you're probably looking at page 1 of the book now, which is a lot of funky kind of text on a colourful background, and this is what we call, in the comics industry, a verso.
Yeah.
Which is basically where all the legal the Lego goes.
Legal lingo. The Lego.
I'm a writer, me.
You hide it so well.
This is where all the legal information about the book goes. So we put the credits here. We put, just like copyright stuff, first edition, that kind of thing. It's a relatively boring page as comics go, but I would say hats off to Nick for making a lovely, colourful background.
Thank you. You'll notice that crops up quite a lot.
It probably will. Yeah, well, we're nothing if not, keen to recycle. And yeah, it's just, one of these little things which I never even thought about when making.
Not
a
in the
book.
early days. No. I remember when I used to make like little black and white comics when I was first starting out on the sort of indie scene. I'd staple them together and photocopy them, at my nearest print shop or whatever. I never had a verso at the front of my books.
No.
Yeah, anyone could have ripped off everything in there. I'd sometimes copyright Nick Angell or something.
Yeah, that's very good.
That was about it, really. I wouldn't write a publishing date or any of this sort of rights reserved, and characters, events, and stories are entirely fictional. Which, to be honest, I probably should have written. Really.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, like, I never really appreciated the design work that must go into a book until I had to kind of start doing it. And it's funny, isn't it? Because you think, well, this is just a page of text. It's really boring, I could just write the text, or I could try and jazz it up a little.
But it does also start the book. It sort of makes everything feel a bit sort of official.
Yeah.
We were saying earlier about how we're just small press creators, and I say just, they're actually amazing small press creators, and it's amazing being that. But whatever. It adds a certain legitimateness to your book, it sort of creates it, and it makes you realise this is a real serious thing,
Yeah, you start to feel more important than you are.
Exactly, and that's what really this is all about. I think.
Pretty much, yeah.
Particularly this commentary as well, it's all about trying to feel more important than we actually are.
It's massive ego stroking, basically. We assume people are listening to this. We could just be shouting into the void.
Yeah.
Anyway, we spent a great deal talking about the legal information. We'll turn the page. So now we're on our first kind of 2-page spread. We'll be seeing many of these, as books traditionally do consist of 2 pages side by side,
classic thing,
one left, one right.
Yeah.
We didn't want to break the mold.
No, not really. Working on a three double page, 3 triple. I'll forget it. Just forget it. Carry on.
Forget it. Yeah, working on a book which is nothing but a deck of cards. You can shuffle. That's actually a good idea. Right?
That's quite interesting.
We should add that to the list.
The massive list of inevitable projects.
We'll ignore the director's commentary page because that's getting a bit meta.
Very meta.
It's a bit kind of
Russian
rabbit hole esque.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. So on to page
Straight into the story.
Page 1. Now, this is the grand opening.
Yeah.
And it features some peculiar-headed individuals.
Absolutely.
Who
you might recognise.
Yeah. If there's any long-term Afterlife Inc. readers, these are some mysterious figures which first turned up in Afterlife Inc. Volume 1.
Indeed.
And they are still unexplained to this day. They've never been named in the comic, but I've always referred to them as the Life Corporation.
Because they're kind of the opposite of Afterlife Inc.
Very much so, yes. And they...
In fact, they're Empyrean,
yes,
is the other way up.
It's upside down,
It's an inverted Empyrean.
And it's kind of implied that they are an insect-like...
hive mind
kind of thing that kind of just mimicked Jack and the Afterlife, because it was just something they saw from afar. And yeah, they're basically characterised by being human-shaped
objects,
people, but they all have weird heads. Bit true. They actually sprung out of a much earlier comic project of mine.
Oh, really?
From years ago. Yeah, they were originally called the Surreal. Way back when, and they were enemies of Dark Force.
Dark Force,
which is something for another day.
Absolutely. Foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing. Yes, maybe we'll touch on some of that later.
So, do you have some big plans for these guys for the Life Corporation?
I do indeed.
Okay.
I do indeed.
They'll be coming back into Afterlife, I think.
They will indeed. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's big. As their sole appearance in Afterlife Inc. was, they turn up. They're weird. Basically, the summary is random weirdness.
Yes, it was. I remember. Yeah, that was good.
Not worry about it. But of course, they've now been recruited to Afterlife Inc.
Yep.
They've been reprogrammed. They're wearing white suits, and they are standing on Nick. Where are they currently standing?
Well, yes, they're not in Melodia here, are they? Next, this is the very beginning of the story, but they are standing on a broken mountaintop from Melodia. Which is the mountain range is called the Kolapati Mountains.
Where did Kolapati come from?
It's very important actually for greater 7-string mythology. So I can't go into too much on it. But Kolapati, if you look it up, is a musical term which refers to the soloist of an orchestra. So for example, lead violin number 1, takes over from the conductor and manages the general tempo and flow of the whole piece. So essentially, the entire orchestra turns to first violin and goes, how are we going to do this next bit? And the conductor almost takes a step back and goes, let's. And so if the violinist decides to go very slow at this point and sort of legato, I suppose, and add a lot of feeling into it, then the orchestra will follow their lead.
Oh, right.
And this very much alludes to the fact of the myth of the soloist in the 7-string universe, which is that the soloist can, in times of dire need, do what's referred to as a kolapate and take control of the entire melody of the universe, which is something that I will be coming up to in the story at some point. But the Kolapati Mountains are named after the importance that this mountain range has for the soloist, which we will see later on.
Indeed.
In this story.
As a design element, of course, lots of rock formations shaped like recorders.
Indeed, it was sort of like an ancient, really, really ancient abandoned temple complex that I suppose would be Tremorclef in origin because of that sort of wind powered musical sound. So yes, these ancient collapsed towers of recorder style.
So we're only on page 1, but we kind of crammed in a lot of...
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, we've already started with 2 central parts of both of our mythologies from page 1, literally, which is quite cool.
Because we both loved crossovers, didn't we? That's basically what kind of fueled this. And there's always that slightly throwaway nature to a crossover where... Because it breaks the laws of both worlds.
Is it really canon?
Yeah,
is it really part of what happened? Will Batman really remember that time that he rocked up and punched Captain America in the face? Probably not.
Yeah.
Will they ever allude to it again? No.
No. It's but it's like I liked the idea that we could jam bits of history from both our worlds into it.
And in fact, actually, because I remember when you first talked to me about, and we were first talking about making a crossover, that was the first time I was coming up with a lot of the ancient soloist mythology for 7th String. And that was what led to the inevitable appearance of a certain weapon, which we'll talk about later on.
Yes, we should, yeah.
But I hadn't really cemented that mythology because it was ancient mythology to 7th String, so it was only going to be, sort of hark to. But this crossover really gave me an opportunity to develop that side of things, which I hadn't done before.
It certainly shaped both our mythologies.
Absolutely.
Because when we first talked about it, we were... we were friends, obviously we were joking about this kind of stuff. We had no grander plan beyond that.
No.
And this just opened the doors to so many things. And, the events of Heavenly Chord informed both our individual worlds. And we really wanted this to be in canon.
It did. Yeah, and it is, because, if you read Volume 2, which will be out at the end of this year, Zach specifically mentioned what's happened here in Volume 2.
As a nerd, I got little shivers when I read that little preview. I know everything that happened, but I loved it.
It's that sort of thing. It just makes everything more real and connected, and I think we're both embracing what this crossover has done for us.
And I hope it's not kind of like blowing our own trumpet too much, but people did seem to kind of love that element of it. People seem to get kind of like, oh, hang on a minute,
that's that.
That's
because of that.
That kind of like, you mean this isn't like it wasn't all a dream?
No,
this is a real thing.
All. It's definitely a real thing.
So a lot happening on this page. Weirdly, I always had this scene, it's one of those weird turns of phrase where I always knew it would start with the Life Corporation saying, "Hear our petition, our words of peace."
Words of peace.
And it's I didn't know where that came from. I always knew it would start this way, and it would be kind of first person. They're getting closer.
Yeah, your script was very not in a bad way, but it was very, very specific on a lot of points on this. 5 panels, all horizontal across, them gradually coming towards the camera. Which
it's the first time we actually worked together.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So and particularly working on my own property, but having a script to work on, seeing you write things like Zach says in this panel, it was like, what? That's weird. I haven't written what Zach's saying, but John has.
Well, that was... Yeah, I guess we'll save some of that for later, but I want to talk later about the weirdness of writing your character.
Yeah, that's quite key, actually.
And kind of the awesome, terrible burden that was of how cool it was.
But then it was the same for me. I had to draw Jack.
Yeah.
And Ash, your previous artist, who has essentially defined the look of Jack, had done such an incredible job that I just bask in his shadow. To be able to have a chance to draw him was amazing.
We're all very nice people, really, aren't
we? We are, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're just brown nosing.
Really blow my own trumpet here. You'll notice that one of the Life Corporation dukes has a TV for a head.
Indeed.
That's very important later on.
Is it?
It is indeed. You drew it.
I did draw it.
You did draw it. You can't remember.
Oh, important in this story.
Yeah.
I thought you meant in your greater
No, sorry, no.
No, absolutely. It's very important in this story. Yes. Which is very clever, actually.
That's what we call foreshadowing. And also, a lot happens on this page. Our first introduction to Requiem.
Indeed.
Boom, right there. Right then and there.
Yeah.
So no familiar faces yet, just straight...
Which is quite cool, actually. I like that. It's
I
good.
like, yeah.
It's sort of like a soft Mysterio start.
Well, we have a bit more of Requiem on the next page, so maybe
Indeed.
we should turn the page.
Moving on.
So now we have our sinister villain.
Indeed. And you can see the whole of this mountaintop now in its sort of glory.
Floating in...
a white void.
Which, I guess, if anyone was reading this and knew Afterlife Inc, they'd be like, oh, hang on a minute. That's the void.
That void looks
That's
familiar.
the void, yeah.
I will say at this point that the void makes things very difficult from an artistic perspective.
Do tell, Nick.
Yeah, well, no, it's not quite often when I'm drawing a page, obviously it all starts off as lines on white. And I often look at that and I think, oh no, this page is going to be rubbish because it's. And then only once you've added the colour are you sort of like, oh wow, actually no, this is looking all right. Actually, it's not as horrendous as I thought it was. But quite often the void led to large blank areas which I couldn't add any colour into.
Dead space, you might
Exactly.
say,
Yeah. And so I had to be very conscious of not letting that dead space overwhelm the page and make everything look very empty. And so quite often I would draw a page and I might have put quite a lot of sky in when I was doing, say, a page from 7th Stream because I could put all these colours and clouds into the sky. But of course I couldn't with the void. So quite often I would bring the camera down, as it were, and to fill that space because otherwise you'd have this huge... So it informed the composition of drawings quite often, which was quite an unexpected challenge.
Well, that is... I never realised. I never realised what a monster I was.
You are horrific, yeah. I also added a sort of bloom effect, which you can see on this page as well.
That is awesome.
Yeah, which I quite made it feel more like, rather than I've forgotten to colour the sky in, more like a sort of deliberate effect of a literally unimaginable whiteness.
Well, it could look a bit flat.
Yes,
it
can.
It kind of like distinguishes it from the gutter, I guess. This was kind of weird because like I wanted to have like Requiem kind of in shot, but also not get a clear look at it.
There, that was tricky. Yeah.
I mean, because one of the first, when we first started talking about the concept of the story, the idea of the word requiem sprang to mind because a requiem is traditionally a song for the dead. Yeah. And it just seemed the perfect fusion of our two worlds.
Absolutely, songs and death. Brilliant.
It's wonderful, yeah. And so requiem was always going to be the enemy, and it kind of hit upon the idea of making him a conductor. Yeah. Which is tying into. So, and this is the thing as well. Like he's technically a new villain created for this story, but he draws very heavily on 7th String.
Yeah, sort of more my world than yours.
He is a musical villain.
Yeah, but he isn't from my world.
Now that is something which evolved out of this as well. I guess we will touch upon that later.
Because we talked a lot at the time about whether the villain of the inevitable over-the-top vaudeville, a villain should be a member of either world, and it didn't really make sense. And quite often in crossovers, like I'm picturing this one Marvel DC crossover from a little while back, I think it was 90s, where there was this sort of box in an alley with a tramp.
The Marvel vs DC leading into the Amalgam universe.
Yes,
Access.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Access,
and he was very much someone completely new and external to everything, sort of pulling these two worlds together. Was he in one or other of the worlds, or was he in our world?
He was meant to be like there were meant to be two brothers who were living universes who were Marvel and DC.
That's classic Marvel DC stuff, isn't it?
Who had kind of like been pounding at each other for so many millennia that bits of them had fallen off. Right. And the sharks became human souls on occasion. Right. And they were the Access people. Like the role of Access was someone. I think I could have got that wrong. It was a person who.
Sounds about right.
Was there to kind of like guard the balance.
Ridiculous, and therefore probably about right.
But then, like years later, they did Avengers versus JLA, which is very good. And the villain is a Green Lantern villain.
Ah, see, there you go. So you can pick one from one of the universes, I suppose. And there was no reason why he couldn't be. But I think what we wanted was some. We were. Without really realising it, starting to build a multiverse here, I think. And
we couldn't help it in a way.
Like, exactly. A lot of things sort of fell into place by themselves, and this was one of them. Like, imagine if he came from yet another world. That would add so much potential to what people are thinking about. And that's where he came from, I guess.
One thing, I've always liked characters who are on fire.
I thought you were going to say that because of Muriel.
Yeah, like...
just characters on fire.
Clearly, I only have like a very limited amount of ideas, and I just recycle them constantly. But
most of them are just
But
fire.
This is on you, actually. I didn't actually design Requiem at all. But I love the look of Firestorm, the DC character. Yeah. Top of his head's on fire.
A lot of Requiem influence came from that Marvel demon character. What's he called?
Oh, Dormammu.
Dormammu, yeah, that's the one.
Dread Dormammu.
Because he's got a sort of flaming underhead.
He does indeed, yeah. Underhead.
Yeah, that's what Requiem's got, a flaming underhead.
I have a bad case of underhead.
Sometimes people call it a neck, but I don't call it that. I call it an underhead.
A thin body on top of my proper body.
Why use a boring word like that when you can go with underhead, which is far more exciting?
Underhead. Isn't that the name Frodo Baggins went under when he was travelling incognito?
Yeah.
Okay, well, So that sets up our villain. We're only on page 2.
We should probably go a bit faster than this.
That sets up our villain, Requiem, who has a wonderfully, I would say that, but a wonderfully spooky little appearance. First appearance. I like how a little bit of panel breaking there, where his wand, his conductor's wand, his baton comes out.
I feel like I don't do that enough, so I'm glad I did that there.
That was good. And then we cut to another John Locke trope, which I love to bits. The darkened control room with glowing screens.
Yeah, which is good for an artist's perspective because I don't have to draw that much.
You don't have to draw backgrounds.
No, exactly. Just do a big black space and some buttons and lights.
Bit of bloom.
Always fun.
More do you want?
Always bloom with me.
So then we have some mysterious characters talking in the dark.
Yeah.
Probably special mention at this point to Michael Stock.
Oh, he's a bit of a legend.
He's
really, isn't he?
Lettering wizard.
Queen.
Lettering queen.
Queen of the letters.
Emperor.
Empress.
Definitely
going with the girl thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I just...
He's quite... Well, he's quite charming, yeah. Beautiful work on the lettering. So this odd dichotomy where we have these two characters mysteriously in the dark. And it's like, who are they?
Who could they be?
And they're quite clearly Jack and Aykroyd. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Aykroyd notable for his lovely golden speech bubbles. A Michael Stock trademark.
I do like that very much.
It's very cool.
Makes him sound like he's got sort of voice. You know what I mean? Like that sort of voice.
I don't know. I never really thought about it. I often imagined he was like a guy speaking into a drain pipe. Like had that kind of slightly echoey.
I imagine that whenever he talks, his sort of wires sort of wobble and flutter together. Kind of like he's trapped in see an enemy or something. And that's how his voice would sound as a result, because it's coming out through all of these. Because he doesn't have a mouth, does he?
No.
He's ridiculous.
He is it's one of those weird things where, like, you know, sometimes like, you it's just normal. You're like, oh yes, Mr. Aykroyd, and then occasionally, maybe like when you've had 2 pints and you're seeing the world slightly differently, and you just think like, what the hell? Like, what the hell did I come up with?
Yeah.
Like,
if he's not wearing a suit, does he just sort of fall apart?
No, you're not the only person to ask about Mr. Aykroyd naked.
I've written loads of fanfiction.
Erotically charged fanfiction.
Yeah.
No, Mr. Aykroyd.
Mrs. Aykroyd.
Mr. Aykroyd is he's like a straw doll. If you ever Google those.
Okay, I think I have seen them before. He's like bundled.
He's basically like a massive wire, shaped and wrapped into a humanoid shape.
But the wire's quite thick, isn't it?
It's kind of like if you took in the long lost issue 0 of Afterlife Inc, the lost issue, you do see him naked per se.
Yes, you do. I remember because he's running down a corridor, isn't he?
He looks like a cheese string.
He does look
basically, yeah.
Cheese string guy.
Jack was always going to make a joke about didn't realise that cheese strings went to heaven or something, but it never quite came up.
Cheese string TM.
Yeah. Get a lifetime supply of cheese strings.
Exactly. Yeah.
But like, he's just made of gold wire.
Cool, man. I like him.
But then we segue from these two mysterious figures talking in a darkened room, and
to Pearson.
If
anything, the star of the whole comic.
Who is our
Coulson.
It is our Coulson.
Definitely our Coulson.
And this is the joke which started the
whole thing. Yeah, which we're about to. If we turn page now.
Turn the page.
Time to face the music. And this page is basically what informed the entire thing, isn't it?
Yeah. It was all a. It was a joke, wasn't it?
It was.
It's an anecdote we'll probably be telling till the day we die.
And we've told it many times before. We'll tell it again.
But we were joking about that moment at the end of Iron Man 2. Who's seen Iron Man 2? You know,
put your hands up.
Put your hands up. Yeah.
One puts their hand down.
And he's just wanted to be popular. Then you say end of Iron Man 2. They go out to the desert and they find Thor's hammer
in a big crater,
in a massive crater, and we just jokingly said,
how cool would it be?
How cool would it be if we did exactly the same thing, except it's the eponymous 7-string, the magic guitar sword, sticking out of the desert in the afterlife?
Yeah. And all the questions that would ask. Why is the 7-string on the Empyrean? Why isn't Zack there? He's separated from his sword. What's going on? And also, that's a heart to Thor's hammer. Brilliant.
But it all kind of sprang from this moment. And we had nothing else.
No, that was the defining aspect, and it informed so much of the story, because Zack being separate from the sword is very important for the entire first part of this comic, and the story as a whole. And it informed the fact that Zack would be coming to the Empyrean, not the other way around. Jack going to Melodia, and so much of it was born out of this one this one image. That then when I came to draw as a full-page splash, I was like, holy crap, there's a lot riding on this.
Yeah. No pressure.
No,
no
I need to get
pressure
this
at all.
right, because this is probably the most important page of the entire thing.
And it's iconic.
It is.
Like,
I'm glad
it's
it is.
instantly iconic. It's very, very cool. It's a splash page, always fun. It symbolised a lot for the two of us. Like this is this stupid little idea.
This is happening.
Which made the whole thing happen. So yeah, and then of course this is our prologue. It's like boom, it's happening, and we want to treat it like a movie.
Yeah, so the pre-credits and then the theme tune starts,
and then boom, you have the title screen, the Heavenly Chord. This is happening. We turn the page, I guess,
and you're onto a fantastic double-page spread from our legendary Ash.
Our man in America, Ash Jackson, who is the main artist on Afterlife Inc, with amazing inks and colours by Nathan Ashworth.
Absolutely, who are your sort of A-team, really?
They're my A-team,
only because they're the ones that you turn to for the core of the work that you do on the book.
Well, I mean, Lifeblood
is all them.
Is entirely them. It was our kind of, we wanted to tell like a long form story with the same art team
without it changing art style. Yeah, exactly.
Kind of boom, there it is. And
this was very important for the crossover because, of course, like the crossover is a fusion of our two worlds. But I was going to draw the whole thing, and John was going to write the whole thing, which would mean that a lot of what defined John's books, i.e. Ash's art style, was not going to make it into this book at all. I'd never really, I'd done a bit of fan art and stuff here and there, but I'd never really drawn your characters and your world before. And so, in a way, it was going to be a bit of a harsh introduction to, now Nich Angell's drawing John's world. We'll have to come to terms with that. So we really wanted Ash to have a part in it, because he represents part of what the crossover is, part of what the identity of Afterlife Inc. is. And so then when we realised that actually, we can take advantage of this fully and we can get him to draw my characters as well, that became very exciting.
Yeah, because of course he'd never touched your characters before. Other people had drawn your characters on occasion as fan art.
Well, I've had fan arts and
stuff
stuff from people, which is always awesome. But never in a sort of official capacity, really. No.
I think the weird thing is, it's like, because I'm just a writer, like, because I can't draw, I'm always used to seeing other people draw my stuff, like, because I need them.
Of course.
They spin my
yarns
into gold, and they make it all wonderful. Yeah,
they do.
And but you, of course, you write and draw.
I do.
The full package in many ways.
I am.
So was this weird? Like seeing.
It was really weird, and actually I was a bit nervous. And because I was really afraid that he would draw them better than I did.
Put you out of a job.
Exactly, yeah. And in some ways he has, but not in a way that I have lost all faith in everything I do. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was a bit worried that I'd be like, right, that's it, and just throw it all away, and I'm just going to become a rubbish writer. No, not really. But no. It was a bit nerve-wracking, and the result was so good, and seeing someone draw my characters like so properly and so entirely like Ash did for this, but also so well, sort of instantly put my mind at ease. As much as I was like, wow, that's really good, and in many ways better than maybe what I'd have drawn, I'm really glad he did it, because I love seeing it. It's different.
It's different. It's not better. Like, I love both your art styles. Ash, if you're listening,
props.
Good, yeah, my boy. But like, it's not objective. There's no kind of
you're
one
right.
is better than the other.
You
It's
are
just
right.
I love both the styles. I mean, I wouldn't be working with you if I, utterly.
Hopefully,
yeah. It's nothing to do with friendship. I'm just
putting up with my crappy scratching. For some reason,
kind of milking you for all the art I can.
All my art milk.
Yeah. On a side note, it's very cool to see the tuner.
Yes.
On that page.
Yes, it is.
Because I'm a massive fan of 1980s Grant Morrison Doom Patrol.
Mm-hmm.
And I always was drawn to the tuner, which is why he makes like a little appearance later on.
Indeed.
Because he just looks so bizarre.
Yeah.
I love it. And I really like Ash's rendition of him there. I think that's very, very weird and freaky.
There's a good story behind the tuner, because he is based on the speedo gauge from my car.
His head's a needle, isn't it?
Yes, because his head is a needle that sort of tracks a gauge, which you see in this comic, and also if you read 7th Street Volume 1, it's much more a thing in that as well. And the shape of the needle in my car, which I see obviously a lot.
Because you drive,
sort of just jumped into my head as a character, and I thought, how great would it be if you had this big character who was this big sort of hulking, hunched over, robed character whose head sort of rocked from side to side in order to depict points on a gauge. And that informed his entire design. And so, he's ended up being this bizarre gauge alien.
And who could forget fish?
Absolutely. Which is, I think, a hilarious joke about tuna.
Which kind of Oh my life! I never even got that.
You never get it.
No, I'm not a writer. I don't really work with words. I'm very proud, however, to have given Fish his first line.
Yes. Fish has never spoken in
and
7 string history.
Fish speaks.
He does. We won't ruin that yet until we get to the
It's
page.
like the tell-all biography, isn't it? It's like Fish speaks.
That's what our tagline should have been for the whole of Heavenly Chord. Read this book because Fish speaks.
Now with extra fish.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I should do a spin-off just about Fish.
Just about Fish.
fair,
The ongoing adventures of Fish.
Fish in the musical world.
Catamaran can make a cameo.
They could actually.
Yeah.
They should.
Or Fish can make a cameo in Catamaran.
Either way, it's good.
Anyway, should we turn that page?
Turn that page to the playlist page.
Yeah, which, of course, one thing we were very clear about from the get-go was music is a big part of your world.
Of course.
I love a bit of music on occasion.
We're both big music fans.
Yeah, and we should have a soundtrack.
And it's all, again, part of this, like, thinking bigger, I think, basically. Like, we can't create a feature film, and we don't want to. We want to create a comic here, but at the same time, we love the fact that a film or an animation can have a soundtrack to it and can evoke certain emotions.
Yeah, cinematic.
We approach comics in a cinematic way.
We do.
And so, to partner up that, why not have some music?
I'm wearing a beret.
Yeah.
As I talk about this.
I'm sipping a brandy. Listen.
Smoking an exotic cheroot.
That's how I drink brandy.
Through your nose.
With a straw. Through my nose.
It's hardcore.
Snort a quick brandy.
Yeah, it's getting all real in here.
It's proper real.
Yeah. But yeah, so we put together a podcast. Not a podcast, a playlist.
Yeah,
words. Right. And we have 2 playlists.
We do.
Because it was released in 2 parts, mostly to save your aching wrists. Because it was always this odd thing where it was like we wanted to do it, but you had it's easy for me to write stuff.
Yeah, it's really easy.
And it's
bashed it out in a day.
Yeah.
Actually, about 2 weeks, but still.
Yeah. It's easy enough to write something, but then Nick's the poor sod who has to draw it all. So it was this odd balance where we said, well, originally it's only going to be 30 pages. We'll keep it nice and trim. Then it kind of expanded a little bit. So I kept trying to compress moments. But then when you got around to drawing it, you were like, oh, hang on a minute, can't I kind of expand this bit and make this bit look awesome?
There were lots of bits where I thought, yeah, this has so much potential visually. I could add a bit more in, and then the page count side as well. And
well, I think it's funny, isn't it? Because if I'm working with another artist and I'm commissioning them to draw my stuff, it's because it's a transaction, and they do amazing work, and hopefully I pay them something for their work. It's a set number of pages.
Absolutely.
But in this instance, we were both working on it as a shared collaborative project.
Yeah.
And so that was an entirely different dynamic working on the script, because I wrote it and discussed all the story with you and everything and made sure you were happy with it. And, and of course worked with your characters, and with your blessing made sure that the characters lived up to what you wanted from them. And then we started drawing it, you started drawing it, and then you were like, well, can I expand this bit? And I was like, well, why not? Yeah. It's you brought that kind of artistic flair to it. And
yeah, exactly. I mean, as much as you were the writer, it was when I write my comics, a lot of things aren't set in stone because I'm writing very much from a visual perspective. In fact, my dialogue often comes freestyle after I've drawn a page.
Kind of beatbox.
I'll know. I'll know generally what characters are going to say across a page.
Yeah.
My script will very much have been, Zach says something to the effect of. That's usually what my scripts are like.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of
and then I assemble it as I go.
Yeah, it's it's probably a correct term for that. But you, as the writer and the artist, you can
I can
do
be
that.
like
Yeah,
that,
you
exactly.
have that freedom. Yeah.
But obviously, as a team, it can't work quite like that. But we still wanted to preserve aspects of how both of us work.
Yeah.
In order for this to be a true collaboration, because otherwise it would just be, a sort of project that wasn't really that had this strong identity of either of our worlds. So it was very important we kept that.
But all of that is a slightly roundabout way of saying that as it got bigger, we ended up splitting it into 2 parts.
Indeed.
We found a natural, because there was only so much you could
do it at a time.
Because you had other gigs and other.
It would just have delayed the book. It would have potentially taken, over a year to make, and that would have been split amongst other things. And rather that we could get something out, get people excited, and then look forward to the second part and
Exactly.
it.
But then of course we ended up doing 2 playlists.
Indeed,
we did 2 playlists, and as with both playlists, 16 songs. I chose 8, you chose 8, and you mixed them together.
Yes, with sort of event labels. Yeah.
And I have to say, I really like them both, which is interesting because we technically are only responsible for half of the playlist each.
But we both like what each other has brought to it. Yeah.
And we did bring in slightly different things. It's you've been corrupting me to some quite filthy dubstep, which is something I never would have listened to 2 years ago.
But this is it, where you've been introducing me to bands that I simply would I just hadn't heard of or wouldn't have discovered because I'm sort of stuck in my electronic dubsteppy ways. So
it's hard to say which playlist I like the most because playlist 2 has been in my car for a good while now.
Really?
And I love that one to bits. I think like some cracking tunes on that, like Vancouver Beatdown.
That's one of my tunes.
My life, yeah. That's just life changing.
It's really special, isn't it?
That's the soundtrack to the best fight scene in your head.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Definitely. I love it so much.
But I guess we can touch on it later, but I was very happy with some of the songs we got into part 1.
Yeah, I think part 1 still retains for me that sort of real
specialness.
Yeah, because it was the first one we did, and it's quite iconic, I think, and it's just got some quality tunes on it. Really. Yeah,
they work well, and that's the thing, they work well. We go from like kind of indie rock to some electro to dubstep and back again. A bit of nerdcore, bit of rap.
Yes,
in there.
Yeah, which was good. I hadn't heard any of that before,
so
which was good. That's hilarious.
But anyway, so page 1 proper, I guess, of the main story.
After the prologue.
And our first introduction to Zach, our hero.
Yes. And, interestingly, a weapon that isn't a 7-string.
Now, you see, that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool, because
we just sort of soft introduced that. Yeah, here we go. What's that? Because you find out about it later, but...
Well, it's actually ended up having, I guess, kind of greater significance in your world.
Yeah.
But it's this odd thing that, like, the original idea was that, like, the 7-string has landed on the Empyrean.
Separate of Zach. So
what is Zach? And
what's Zach going to fight with?
Another image which I'd always wanted to have was that, like, Jack
with the
7-string.
Yeah, exactly.
The two heroes kind of facing off.
So much of the story is defined by things we wanted to see.
Yeah.
And then how do we get the characters to these places then?
And we toyed with the idea of where was Zach's other weapon going to come from? Because on the one hand, it would have been it was just a very cool visual opportunity to have your hero with a different weapon.
Absolutely, I was looking forward to it.
And we were going to be like, did he steal it from Requiem? Did he? Like, what was it going to be anyway?
Yeah, exactly.
But then you came up with this awesome
as I said,
tuning fork.
I had been sort of half developing this ancient soloist myth, and I thought, how cool would it be if the first soloist of all time had the very first weaponized instrument? Like she was the first to ever do it, and as a result, it would have to be some really, really basic instrument. Not as complex as something like a guitar, which has strings and tuning pegs and all that, but something so raw. And what rawer than a tuning fork, really? You just hit it against something and it makes a noise. It almost feels like a weapon already because you hit it on things.
Very subtle thing with the tuning fork I like is that the hand, because it's got lots of little handles along its length.
It does.
And they light up the further along you hold it.
Yeah, where you grab it, it lights, and therefore it can create a different note out of it. I actually got my dad in as a consultant for this.
Yes.
Yeah, because he's an engineer, an electronics engineer and general engineer and general all-round genius, basically. And I sort of sat down with him, I was like, does it make much sense if you grabbed a tuning fork from different points and therefore had a different note out of it? And he said, generally, no but we'll allow it because, for things like a ruler, when you twang it on the end of a desk, you change the length, it does. So he said, you have my blessing, and that's all I needed.
You have your blessing to kind of fudge the laws of physics slightly.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, my own laws, Melodia's laws of physics, so it's fine.
Of course, little subtle David Bowie reference on this page, which is The Man Who Fell to Earth.
Absolutely.
David Bowie movie. I'm a massive Bowie fan.
It's not the only time either in the script that you use quotes from songs.
True. Yes. Now you see, I love a bit of wordplay.
It's good.
A bit of punnage.
Something I suddenly thought, shit, I should really have done that in my books. I should have put.
I was worried we were potentially nicking some good. Like Christmas pun, like some good kind of like little one-liners.
But then in a way, I'm glad that this book's got them.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Like Time to Face the Music, that just seemed to make a hell of a lot of sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
And also, of course, I love a bit of symbolism, and I love I think the most evocative words you could ever have in the story is a fall. The fall, if you will, the biblical, the mythological fall, and it's something I always like to put into my work.
Absolutely.
And it opens with
a fall.
The fall. Zach has literally
smashed into the ground.
And if you're being really kind of arty about it, you could say that, and like the fall from heaven, he has fallen onto heaven,
into heaven, exactly,
from another world,
smashed into heaven.
The first multiversal traveller.
So turning
the page. Our hero rises. Very cool kind of action shot here.
Very happy with that actually.
He looks pretty badass. And also we get some proper dialogue.
Indeed.
Is there a phone ringing?
There is a phone
ringing. Okay, sorry about that. The phone rang. The phone rang. It's to prove we're real people.
Yeah, absolutely.
But big heroic shot of Zach.
Mm-hmm.
This was basically just, I think, in the script, like the hero moment.
Yeah, kind of.
Zach just has to look badass.
Yeah.
And also, like the first time we get some dialogue.
Yes.
Zach, which was a bit of
This was your sort of starting to defining moment of you've got to write for my character.
Well, do you want to know something weird?
What's that?
These are actually the last 2 pages I wrote
Really?
of the entire comic.
The entire thing.
The entire thing, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Because I'm very obsessive when I write, and I do an overview,
Okay.
and I print that off,
Right.
and then I create a page by page breakdown in Excel.
Right.
I make a spreadsheet, and I print that off.
Right.
And then with these 2 tools in front of me, I now know exactly what's going to happen on each page,
Sure.
so I can write it in pretty much any order.
Right.
Of course, obviously, it helps the dialogue if you don't repeat something that's been said before.
Obviously.
So this is where editing comes in.
Mhm.
But like, because there were all these key scenes that I knew had to happen, I started later on. I'll tell you when we the first page we did. But these were just like the last 2 pages that needed doing.
That's really interesting.
And I've got to say, Heavenly Chord is probably my favourite thing to write ever.
That's awesome.
Of everything I've written, it was the easiest to write.
You have said that before, and it's very cool.
It was the most fun
Yeah.
as well. Like, it was a laugh a minute to write.
Could you feel like you sort of let loose a little bit and sort of go crazy? Or?
It felt like comics magic. You know, like sometimes like I felt like, oh my god, I'm finally making the kind of comics I've always read. And like it was just awesome. Like everything about it was the very nature of the comic, the fact it was a crossover, it felt cool.
I've got to say, it was actually generally it was quite easy to draw as well. Like it sort of came quite easy. There were aspects like that I would sort of stress over, like drawing Jack. But generally, you know, it was at least as fun as drawing my own stuff, which has never been the case when I've sort of worked from a script or worked on another project. But you know, I guess we're kind of on the same page with this, so it's pretty cool.
It was cool, and it was a lot of fun, but a little bit nerve-wracking because I had to put words into your character's mouth, and you know, hopefully it sounded like something he'd say.
Yeah, which is tricky.
Zach gets to play our protagonist in this story.
He does.
It was always going to be hard to kind of like treat both sides equally.
Yeah.
Especially the fact they're on different worlds.
And that only one of my characters comes across.
Yeah. And so, on the one hand, 7 String is maybe being a bit shortchanged because you get the full Afterlife Inc cast. But on the other, and so to kind of like balance that a little, I figured, well, Zach is a more conventional hero character. Like he can have an arc in this story. So he'll be our hero.
Yeah.
And Requiem, who is a musical villain, will be our villain. So I wanted to kind of like balance it. So even though obviously we're in Afterlife Inc's world, there's a fair bit of Afterlife Inc here. I wanted to try and give Zach a bit more time a bit more emphasis if possible.
In the shot sort of. Yeah.
Because and also like the weird thing is, like, you know, classic crossovers. The heroes meet, they're equally matched. They beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah, and then they sort of come to a sort of stalemate as well. Yeah. And then go, let's go take on the big bad kind of thing.
But it's the fact that like Jack
isn't a fighter
at all.
No.
Afterlife Inc is all about the good guys being the overpowered.
Yeah.
You know, it's always like the rebels are like the little guys.
Yeah.
And the Empire.
Yeah.
But Afterlife Inc are the Empire.
Yeah.
So the whole point was kind of like, it's like, oh, okay, what do you do if the good guys are kind of like overwhelmingly
strong and then populated?
And it's like, you know, and then, you know, are they the good guys?
Yeah.
You know, so we played with that a little bit. Yeah. So Zach gets to be kind of a little bit badass here, and I hope you're happy with the dialogue.
Very much so. Very much happy. Yes. And in fact, after we had the conversation, you know, about how I feel you need to write Zach and the kind of attitude and character he has, you pretty much hit it on the head, really. I think.
Well, he has just gone through a bereavement and like a lot of. You know, he's an angry young man, basically.
He is very angry and very cut off from his own emotions, and so he needed to be very, you know, short with his words, and sort of deliberately and black and whitely heroic. Like, there's a bad guy. Yeah. If so, I'm going to kick his ass. Like, that's as simple as it is, and you introduce that really well by saying another empire in this page.
Oh yeah, I know.
Because from the very beginning, we now have a reason to see why Zach, you know, would fight. And you'll just stand up and get it done.
Yeah. Because it's like this is after book 1 of 7 String.
Absolutely.
Zach's out in the world. There is a war going on.
There is.
Like
on his world, there is.
His only experience of like soldiers and guns are that they are the invaders, the bad guys, the oppressive people who. And it's like, I think his reaction is pretty.
I think it's
pretty measured. Like, he's got no idea what's going on here.
No, and they're pointing guns at him.
Yeah.
So he'd better do something about it.
So he gets to be a little bit badass.
Yeah.
I guess we could turn the page.
Yeah, turn the page at the other side. This one? Or are we moving?
Oh, do you think there's anything to add on that page?
I don't think so. No. That whole double page spread of Zach.
Bit of humour.
He's mobile. And then the big backflip.
Yes. Now, I think a few people maybe thought that this was like a direct continuation, as if because now we see Zach is airborne above the third heaven.
Yes.
He's gone from the second to the third heaven, and I think it was
some time has passed here.
Yeah, and I think that was the thing, and I was never suggesting that he had cleared a whole heaven in one leap.
No.
I was merely suggesting that it's a bit of timey-wimey editing kind of...
time has passed.
Taking a few liberties.
I guess it's easier for me having seen the script and spent a while poring over it and everything, and I can understand how maybe people would have seen it that way.
But it's basically just meant to be he's being really badass.
Yeah, he's far better at this than they expected him to be.
But also, from the perspective, he comes from a universe where the laws of physics are entirely different.
Yeah.
He comes from a universe where music is like the laws of physics. Vibrations can change the world around you, reality, and he's kind of superpowered by Afterlife Inc standards.
Yeah.
So that's why
it's a bit like Superman on Earth, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So if we can't have two heroes of equal power, we have one powerful hero, and then Afterlife Inc's strength is their numbers. They have near infinite resources.
Huge amounts of people, yeah.
So a very cool aerial shot here of Zach battling some angels with jetpacks.
Indeed. I really struggled with that pose, and for the first sort of few attempts at it, I tried to put myself into that back position and get Ali to take photos of me, really dodgy photos, which are now free on the internet for anyone to check out. I was oiled up, of course.
Yeah, well, of course.
But I couldn't actually get the shot right because that angle, I couldn't hold it, and one of the ways I tried to do it was on the stairs, right, with Ali at the top of the stairs, looking down the stairs, and me sort of arched on my back. Head down the stairs. Very nearly killed myself.
I'm picturing it now, yeah.
And even then that didn't work. So I eventually just had to do it out of my head.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty happy with it,
No, it's good.
I'm still pretty happy with it, to be fair.
Good sense of vertigo as well.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of... I always wanted the Empyrean just to be massive.
Yeah,
just to be really crazy big.
Yeah.
And also, you can see a little cameo there on that page from Leica, the rocket dog.
Indeed, yes, which you specifically put in the script.
One of Afterlife Inc's minor employees, who nevertheless kind of pops up now and then.
Popped up a few times now, I think.
Appeared in a story called Leica. Originally, self-titled story in Afterlife Inc Volume 2.
And then there's the Henry VIII one.
That's the same one.
Oh, is that one? Yeah.
And then has a little cameo at the end of Lifeblood, in which she finds Jack's lost key and delivers it.
Yes, that's right. Yep. And so this is their third. This is technically the second appearance, I suppose.
I want to really do down the line a kind of B team Afterlife Inc story,
that'd be
where
cool.
you see all the support stuff,
kind of like Green Lantern Corps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's what goes on. Because you have the 7 core board members. Yes. And even so,
most of the stories follow them.
Yeah, and App and Rich Fire.
They're not in the board, are they?
No, they're not. They've been kind of promoted to some of the kind of promotional material because, they're kind of cool characters. I like them.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, they are not board members.
No.
They are the support team. But yeah, Rich Fire didn't exist when this story was made.
No.
Because that would have been something if we'd had Rich Fire.
He'd inevitably have been in this if he was around, wouldn't he?
Oh, if we have a 10-year anniversary, we'll come back.
Yeah.
We'll add an extra scene where Rich Fire fights Zach.
That'd be great.
That'd be so stupid. But yeah, I guess, and then we cut to the control room.
Indeed.
Afterlife Inc Control Center.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like how I don't think we ever discussed this, but I like how you gave some of the Afterlife Inc employees in this panel almost like military-style suits rather than suits.
Yes, I sort of envisaged them as sort of changing uniform for a crisis. See what I mean?
Yeah, they look good. Looks military. We're both massive fans of Evangelion.
Yes, exactly.
Aren't we? So
yeah.
it's got
I'm sure there's some Evangelion in there, to be honest. Yeah.
Little cameo on that page from Archanda.
Yes.
Who I don't believe has ever been named on the page in Afterlife Inc.
I don't think she has.
But she is quite an important character. She's just one of the support people.
She's in Lifeblood, isn't she?
She was seen interviewing Nuriel in book 2.
That. Yeah.
First drawn by Mark Pierce.
Really awesome.
Clever guy. And then
in fact, I based mine on his.
Yeah.
That was the best reference I had.
She's very, very cool in that story. And She also pops up in Lifeblood briefly when the vampires attack the Afterlife Inc tower.
Yes, I remember. Yep.
And we also get to see Lux.
We do.
Your first depiction of Lux.
Yes.
I like your version of Lux.
Yeah.
She looks. I like how she's a bit more alien. I think when you draw her.
Oh,
I mean that in the best possible way. I do.
Yeah.
I really like her style. Of course, it's funny the evolution of Lux.
This is interesting, isn't it?
The character, because I always want because my characters have been drawn by a load of different artists.
Yeah.
And so I wanted them to be recognisable,
Obviously,
regardless of who they're being
so
drawn
they have to
by.
have strong visual identities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Lux was always going to be utterly jet black,
Right.
like solid black, to the point where her name is Lux, which is Latin for light,
Yeah.
because she absorbs all light.
Right.
She was just going to be solid black all over. The first person to ever draw her properly is a guy called Jamie Boylan, who did some of my early concept art based off my initial sketches. And he drew her as being quite chunky.
Yeah, I remember.
Kind of like muscular.
Yeah.
And he drew her as being solid black, and I always liked that. But because I was never massively strict about it when my artists were drawing her, she kind of evolved slightly.
Yeah, she has evolved.
And I never complained, because I never had an issue with it.
No.
And I just like the way she's changed beyond my control. Like, she
remember-
doesn't have a nose.
No. Did the first one have a nose?
Well, the fact is, she was solid black.
So you couldn't see it?
You couldn't see it, but she was meant to just be human.
Oh, okay.
Shapes, like, but then it's gone, so now she doesn't have a nose.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, in early days, I think she developed sort of stars, like starlight on her body, as though her whole body was a window to deep space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because you never described her in this script, because by then you had 2 books under your belt already, Lux had been drawn hundreds of times. There was no need to describe her. I could just check back. And so many different artists had drawn her. Some of them had gone for a dark blue with stars. And after a while, I sort of thought, I just sort of took it in my own direction and ended up making her literally that. Like, her body is a glass container of space, deep space, with sort of nebula and gas clouds and all sorts of stuff in there, which is weird.
Del Borovic, who drew Elementary, which was a story about Sherlock Holmes and Lux.
Yes.
Book
I remember that's a good one. Yeah.
Del, who I'd worked with on the Unique Tales anthology, which was my first ever kind of comic I got made. Del is awesome, and she got to draw a very Lux-centric story, and she really, I think, like connected with Lux, and she was like, "Can I make Lux look a bit more feminine?"
Yeah,
because she'd been kind of like quite chunky.
Yeah,
and I was like, well, "Yeah, go for it! Like, you're the one drawing it." And she looked, and I think that kind of shaped a lot of Lux's appearance, like that. And then, of course, it kind of informed everyone who drew her.
Yeah, that's it. I think because everyone's used previous drawings of her as a reference to draw her in the future, and yeah, so she has really evolved, probably almost more than any of your characters, or any of the other characters, I think.
And I love Lux to bits, and I worry that I was looking back over my past stories, and I kind of noticed a disturbing trend where
she gets damaged.
Lux is always getting damaged,
Yeah.
and like I was thinking, oh god,
she's got an amazing moment in Lifeblood though when she jumps off.
Oh, thank you.
That's really, really cool.
I love Lux to bits, and I'm sorry, I keep talking about like my characters and stuff. I'm sorry.
We'll
move on a sec, but like I love Lux to bits, and she's gonna have a very big arc. She's a very important character, and I wanted the inversion that she's a very physically strong character.
Yeah.
And Jack is not.
She's very much your muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet I've always had her being damaged, and I was worried that said something about me and the way I was kind of like treating her. And I was like, oh god, I need to be careful about that. But
I don't think I see it that way, because although she's the one who's always getting damaged, she's also the one who's always going in first. She's brave, she's strong, she's the only one of your cast who has a physical presence in terms of force.
I guess you're right, yeah.
And so inevitably someone who does that is going to get hurt. Do you know what I mean?
I like the fact she doesn't really get damaged in this story, which was a nice change of pace.
Yes, she doesn't. And she's very much in charge.
Yes.
Yeah. Frustratingly, with Jack's crazy whims of how he operates this whole operation. But
I think
that relationship between those two is great.
I think like the issues of her getting damaged were more because one of her character arcs is the fact that as an angel, she doesn't have a soul.
No.
She's kind of like all the angels are kind of like machines. They're kind of like artificial beings. And I think certainly in Lifeblood, like her arc is an ongoing arc will be about her kind of finding like her self-worth. Like her issue is like she doesn't really consider herself to be. She thinks of herself like a thing,
like a nothing.
So she doesn't really look after herself. So.
Yeah.
But yes, anyway, sorry, enough sidetracking. You drew Lux very well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And then we have Jack being spooky.
Yes, that final panel, which was very important that people started to think, oh gosh, is he a villain here? Is he a baddie? Is he going to fight Zach with the 7th string? Has he stolen it? Is his mind broken? Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's classic, like, you know, Precious. Like,
yeah,
he's got the cool.
Yeah, he's got the cool guitar solo,
Yeah.
and now he's going crazy with it. So,
well, I think we like. You know, it's a crossover.
Exactly.
The two heroes have to fight.
They do.
Yeah, it was just going to be,
do
they?
Yeah.
So I guess we could turn that page.
And now we're on to probably my favourite 2 pages in the whole first part, I think.
These were, and I think this is just Nich Angell, insane genius. Do you want to talk a little bit about what happened here?
Well, it was funny, yes, because your script essentially did the whole Zach getting knocked off the Empyrean into the void and then jumping off of broken rock and getting back on. I think your script handled that in 2 or 3 panels.
Two panels, I
think. 2 panels.
I was trying to go easy on you. I was like,
which is fair,
yeah.
You know. But I saw this as an incredible, you know, sort of Cloud from Final Fantasy opportunity to just go batshit crazy with the potential ability of what Zach can do. You know, preposterous gymnastics, acrobatics. You know, with no purchase whatsoever, floating through nothing with just rocks around him. And so I said to you, we should make this a double-page spread.
Yeah.
We should grow this scene into some awesome action sequence.
This is, I think, some of the best stuff you've ever drawn.
And I think it still is,
yeah.
Actually. Like, looking at it now, I haven't actually looked at it in a while, and I'm obviously deep in, I've nearly finished now, volume 2.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that's some of the best work I've done. And then looking at this, I'm like, what? I can't believe it.
Because, this is like, if you're listening at home, gentle listener, this is just pure, like, back patting here, because it's like it's just awesome. Like the first page is cool because you added so many little panels. It's pure comic visual storytelling, not a jot of dialogue, but you can see exactly what's going through the character's mind. And then of course the second page you have these awesome panelless
floating sort of
it's like there's a clear transition and like a kind of aerial ballet to it. Like, little things like the shadow.
You mentioned it
when Zach is gliding past a rock and there's a shadow. it does more.
I can't remember where like that came from. I mean, obviously there should be a shadow, I think. But I think as I started to draw it, I suddenly realised what an effect that actually had. Like, it's really quite powerful. If that shadow hadn't been there, he'd have still had that sense of gliding past. I don't know. It's added something to the glide.
It makes it 3-dimensional.
It makes him very glidey, whereas before it was just sort of be there.
The whole page. I mean, I don't know where you even began with this because, like, it's beautiful. Actually, I could just rave about this all day. Like,
I am very, very happy with it. I think part of the panelless aspect was the idea that, you know, he's got nothing to rely on. He's floating in the middle of nowhere. He's got to jump from nothing to. So I felt that panels sort of gave him a little bit of safety. And so losing the panels made him look that is a really subtle.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, like he doesn't have a handhold. He doesn't have a
exactly. Yeah. And so to be able to navigate and still process what to do in a situation like that would involve some superhuman type senses, obviously, which he has.
This is also like a slightly subtle play on the fact that we even joke about it in Afterlife Inc. The fact that their solution to every problem is throwing something into the void,
and it doesn't work.
It doesn't work in this instance. Because of course this is the land of the dead.
Yeah.
And in Afterlife Inc. mythology, if you step off the Imperium into the void, which is infinite, then it strips you down to just a soul.
Yep.
It destroys all self, and you just float off into nowhere. But Zach is not dead.
So he's not from here. These rules don't apply to him.
So we turn the page.
Yeah, we turn the page, and bam, he's back on the Empyrean. And of course, I had a volcano erupt in the background as he landed.
I didn't even twig for some reason. Yeah,
it's sort of like, you know, land and then.
But subtly thinking about the geography, Zach has of course cleared another heaven now. He's on the fourth heaven, Macron.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we get a really cool volcano erupting in the background. Yeah. Another hero shot.
That's a hark very much to sort of Gainax's approach to things, like from Gurren Lagann and Evangelion. You know, when someone does something awesome, a volcano goes off just to show how cool they are.
A planet explodes.
Standard, yeah, exactly. Splits in half or something.
And of course, everyone is nicely shocked.
Yep.
I think this is
even Aykroyd can tell from his face.
Did you? Because again, weirdly, because you stretched that scene out over 2 pages, we then got this page, which now had fewer panels on.
That's correct. Yeah.
And works better for it. I think it's
cool.
funny. these odd little serendipity things, how
Yeah,
it kind of
yeah.
panned out.
It sometimes shows the merit of working from a visual perspective,
Yeah.
sometimes over a words perspective.
And then, of course,
We call App.
for a little fan service,
Call in the heavy.
it was kind of like, what do we do? App!
Yeah.
And
Which
there's
is
a
awesome.
lightning bolt behind.
Yeah, yeah, obviously.
That's a very gratuitous page, really, isn't it? You've got volcanoes everywhere and
Yeah, it's testosterone central, isn't
little
it, really?
Aykroyd cameos. Just
I like this because this is the one time Zach's unstoppable flow is stopped. And although, as you'll find out and see in a minute, it isn't a permanent stop, it is still very cool that App is the one that gets a punch in, I think.
This is the first page I wrote.
Is it?
This is the first page I wrote. We were myself, yourself, our significant others, Ali and Lucy.
Indeed.
We were all up on holiday
In the cottage in Yorkshire.
in the Dales.
Yeah.
And I had my notebook with me,
I
my
remember.
little pen and paper, and this is the first page I wrote because this was such a clear thing in my head.
Yeah.
And I really, really wanted to get a Daft Punk reference.
Yes,
in there. Yeah.
which is excellent. I absolutely love that.
And Nich Angell is king of the glow. It has to be said.
I do love my glows.
App has rarely looked more badass than he does in this.
Why, thank you, sir.
Also, again, more special mention to Skokie
Yes.
and his
integration of
amazing
sound effects.
effects.
Like, that theme at the top is so good because it doesn't obstruct any artwork, but it adds to it. And you can still see everything through the letter. It's just great. It's just really
And the
clever.
glow kind of matches App's glow as well.
So very clever.
Cannot sing his praises highly enough.
No,
really,
no.
Beautiful job.
It's probably going to be a recurring theme in this, is how much we love Stocky.
And how much we love everyone and how we're just wonderful people and get on with everyone.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
So App I've always seen as kind of the ultimate Boy Scout.
Yes.
He is utterly loyal, utterly polite. He's just doing his job.
Yep.
I'd like to think he doesn't take any real pleasure
No.
in slapping Zach down here.
No, it's just his job. He
Yeah.
just has to do it. Yeah.
I think if we ever did do, like in 10 years' time, that director's
Cut.
the director's cut,
Yeah.
I would have 4 or 5 pages of just App and Zach fighting.
We
if
could,
I
yeah,
could,
we could extend this battle a bit, couldn't we?
I
That'd
would,
be well good.
I would fill a whole book of just the two of them fighting because App was never in my original plan for Afterlife Inc.
Really?
Which is a story for another day. But I had a plan of how many books Afterlife Inc was going to be, and then I got sidetracked and ended up self-publishing these side stories, which became a way of evolving
Sort
the
of
world.
kicking it off, yeah.
And App turned up in the second ever story before some of the main board members.
Yeah.
Because again, I had these alpha stories in my head, and these were only the beta stories.
Yeah.
Then App turned up, immediately struck a chord with everyone,
Yeah.
and so it's so bizarre.
Everyone loves App. He's
Yeah,
great.
I love App to
In
bits.
fact, quite a few times I posted work in progress shots on part 2
Yeah.
that had App in them, and most of the comments would be, "Oh, I love App. Oh, App's so awesome. Like, oh, I can't wait to see App again." Like, he is a favourite. He's a fan favourite.
It's funny that he is the ultimate joke. He's a walking iPad.
I know, yeah.
An iPod, sorry.
An old iPod. As
An
well.
old
There'll be
iPod,
some
yeah.
kids who don't even remember that wheel.
But I love him to bits.
Yeah.
I love him to bits. A little bit of slightly influenced by when Grant Morrison did a run on X-Men, New X-Men. He did the Shi'ar Imperial Guard,
Oh yeah.
and he reintroduced the character of Smasher.
Okay.
Like Smasher had always just been a big, dumb, strong flying guy, but Grant Morrison brought in that because of his magic sunglasses.
Brilliant.
Amazing, yeah. He could download powers into his brain.
Ah, right.
And
okay.
and interestingly, Smasher is now in Hickman's run on Avengers.
Oh,
a
really?
new Smasher, a female Smasher.
Ah.
And she has the exact same thing. She finds the sunglasses
Yeah,
and can
use them.
download powers. So App is... He can download apps.
Yes,
for
exactly.
He can download powers for
Apps
any
for
particular situation.
Any occasion, yeah.
So we have our Daft Punk reference.
And then we turn the page.
Harder, better, faster, boom.
Bam.
We turn the page.
And App has been temporarily defeated
Sent flying back.
through huge doors in the middle of a black nothing.
Always very clear about this. I always wanted a big white doors.
Large spaces of sort of evoking, some sort of vast area. Impossible area, I suppose.
But in many ways, this is what it's all been building up to.
It has, absolutely. And then this page is really just servicing the next massive splash, which is Final Boss. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
There were times after we finished part 1, there were times when, because you're working on something every day, it gets routine. You just think well, this is the story, we've got X number of pages to do, it's fine, we'll get it to print, it'll all be done.
Bam, bam, bam.
I think after we finished the book. I had the digital edition on my iPad, and I was having a beer, and it was just kind of like, we've done it.
Yeah.
Like, we've actually done it, and we were kind of sitting back, and I was just drinking this beer, and I was flicking through it, and I got to that page, and it was just, what have we done? Like, just what have we done? Like the impact of it goes, for us at least, and hopefully for some people reading it, and hopefully people will.
But so much of this is really self-serving, isn't it?
Totally self-serving.
Like, it's like, we just wanted to do this, and if some people get some enjoyment out of it, well, that's awesome. That's a massive bonus. But
but I think you've said it nicely. Both our worlds became bigger.
Yeah.
This moment, like, it suddenly, to us at least, it felt significant.
Yeah.
It felt like, I mean, it sounds incredibly pretentious, but this is what I love about comics. It felt like modern mythology.
Yeah. Well, that is what comics is, I think, in a way, and I think it's awesome that people like us can get a chance to also craft something of our own.
And I can only hope that in 10 years' time, there are people who love our characters and
yeah, exactly.
I mean, we'll always look back at this moment and say, this is where it kind of started.
Yeah.
Big Punch Studios, our joint venture, kind of sprang out of this.
It's all born out of Heavenly Chord, really.
It was indeed, and I guess we will, certainly with the end of this book, we can talk a little bit more about that then.
Yeah.
But in terms of iconography, like, Jack's dialogue here sums it all up nicely. This is the classic fairy tale, the classic
climbs
story.
A fearsome tower, facing countless trials along the way. It's perfect. It's brilliant. I love it.
And boom, and we have both characters carrying a weapon.
Yeah. And so
surely this means
turn over the page. But then there's the hilarious, played for laughs,
we have our first confrontation.
Yeah.
And Jack completely diffuses it.
Of course he does.
In seconds. And it was this weird thing as well, where I wanted to kind of like treat both the characters fairly. But at the same time, you can't overpower one character and depower another character just to have that fight.
No.
And I was, even just in looking at them in terms of like life experience, it's a fact that Zack is slightly younger than Jack. I always saw it that way.
He is, I think, yeah.
Zack is the angry young man.
Yeah, the teen almost.
But he's also a more heroic character.
Yes.
He has an arc.
He is.
Jack, by his very nature, is a schemer.
Yeah.
And it's a fact that we could have them both fight and have misunderstandings and learn from each other. But I thought this was one situation where Zack could probably learn something from Jack.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
But at the same time, Jack gets a little glimpse at a true hero.
Yeah.
And it's at the same time, even though Jack is fun and jokey and he doesn't take anything seriously and he's always scheming, he's always got an ace up his sleeve. he doesn't get to be heroic.
No.
That's the thing. He doesn't have Zack's moment.
No.
And I think that's the thing. He will always be kind of on the sidelines.
He'll be the commander.
Yeah.
The quipping managing director.
So immediately we have Jack appearing very in control.
Yeah.
And I think
cocky.
And I think that's kind of like one thing I wanted with Jack is that he doesn't always get his way.
No.
I hope. I mean, I'll keep working on this, but like, I don't want it to seem like he's that overpowered character who is invincible just because he's always got a plan, because he's always Batman. Like,
I think he successfully in Lifeblood. He obviously takes some serious damage. And he didn't look out of control. He didn't look in control then. He looked very much like he'd lost his handle on the situation. There goes the phone again.
There goes that phone. We're back in the room. So yeah, the thing with Jack is like he's kind of smug, but I want to think that like a lot of it is fake. You know, like he's kind of, he always seems like he knows what's going on,
but really he's blagging it.
He's blagging it. He's a massive blagger, and it could have gone either way. And I think the reason, ultimately, spoilers, our heroes win out, is more to do with Zack's heroism.
But of course Jack is making use of Zack's heroism, isn't he? He's employing what he hopes and thinks is a hero in the service of his own ends.
He uses everyone, basically.
He does, of course, yeah.
But then we have another lovely Nich Angell splash.
Introducing the orchestra.
And I think probably my one regret with the entire comic is simply that we didn't see more of a orchestra.
I know, and it was one of those things where in the early days I was a bit worried about them actually, because I thought, oh goodness, it's going to be big crowd scenes with lots and lots of characters. And And then I sort of got through the book, and every time I saw a page where they were on, I was like, oh, thank goodness, actually, it's not too bad. The panel that they're in is small or whatever. And then eventually I got to the end, and all of those reliefs of, oh, I didn't have to draw a massive crowd scene, actually amounted to, oh, I kind of wish I had.
For what they are, they serve a fine purpose. They work perfectly as they are. I just think we could have potentially had some more moments with them.
Yeah, big sort of medieval style battlefield type shots and things.
Because I think they are a cool concept, and I think that's probably my one regret, because they were such a lovely idea.
It doesn't have to be the end of them,
no.
But
we could, I guess, maybe they could be more of them in Melodia. Maybe
yeah, I mean, Requiem
up
gets them from Melodia, as you'll see later on.
But presumably, if you're looking at this, reading this at home, you'll see that the orchestra are a robotic army of violin people. And I think this was your idea, wasn't it, the Orchestra?
It was something that was kicking around that I thought maybe I would use in 7-string at some point. It was just an idea that I had. And then when we sort of came to this, I was like, well, I don't see a better opportunity to wheel that idea out and use it. And so they came in. But I think they were going to be in 7-string before.
But this is another example of Requiem kind of co-opting someone else's resources. Like
making use of something else.
Taking something else on board to kind of, make it his own. But he also has his, what do we call it? His universal... resonance aerial. Yeah, which is also like a giant organ.
Yes.
A giant pipe organ.
Yeah.
Lovely visual effects there.
Thank you.
And as you can see in the sky, you have
that top of the mountain.
The top of the mountain, which is Requiem's floating fortress, which is literally the top of the mountain.
Yes, he ripped it clean from Melodia.
Ripped it out of Melodia.
And came over here.
Very kind of floating island.
Yeah.
Kind of esque, the old Sonic.
Yes, yeah.
Sonic concept.
Absolutely.
But yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
Should we turn that page?
Let's turn that page.
Ah, right.
This is the all-important, essentially, origin of this particular arc.
Yes.
Double page spread. And this is also on Melodia. This is where you can see for the first time Requiem making use of his aerial and tearing a rift in space and time to connect the two universes together.
Indeed, yeah. And of course, this is the Colaparte mounting range prior to Requiem ripping the top off it.
Absolutely.
And this is quite an important place in 7-string mythology.
It is. Now, we talked a little bit about it earlier, about what Colaparte means, and especially what it means for the soloist. And therefore it means something for the soloist in 7-string mythology as well. The soloist is someone who, if you haven't read Volume 1, is essentially the gods sing the universe into existence. There are 7 gods of music, and they all sing the world in. But in order to give humanity a chance at free will, and not to have their entire day-by-day life ruled by this song, each generation is given a soloist who essentially also plays their part of this melody. And in great cases of need and importance for the people who live in the universe, can take control using the Colaparte. The first ever soloist was the woman who used the tuning fork.
Can we name her?
We can name her. She's Prima. Yeah. I still plan to tell that story. I don't quite yet know how. I don't know whether it'll come in as a flashback in 7-string or whether she'll have her own book or whatever, but her story will be told. There's no doubt about it.
It's kind of saying something that's such an important part of that mythology should first appear.
Exactly, and it was all formed from thinking about how Zack could get this other weapon and everything. So up here he's fighting with Requiem, and during the battle, as you can see, his sword gets knocked away from him, but he then sees that there is just this other weapon sort of stuck in Sword of the Stone style. At the top of this mountain.
And I'd like to think that a lot of people, when first reading it, won't think anything of this.
No,
because it's just like a random...
Oh, it's just a weapon there, whatever. And I think that was kind of the idea, is that, we don't dwell on where this weapon came from and what the importance of it is. But when you find out more about the first soloist, Prima, and how her story ends and where her weapon ends up, and then how it becomes a pilgrimage for the subsequent soloists to travel up this mountain and visit her ancient weapon as a way of sort of inducting them into the duties of the soloist, you then realise, hopefully you will then realise subsequently, or now, from me having just told you, how important it actually is.
So, Zack, so this is really, chronologically, our first glimpse of Zack. Post Volume 1.
True.
Because this is a flashback.
Yes, that's right.
And we see him, and he has a new outfit.
He does. Well, he's got a sort of wintry overall hood thing, which he wears to climb up.
Well, because, of course, comparing him to
Volume 1. Yes, he has a completely new outfit,
because he has a different jacket there.
Yeah.
So we see him, he's climbing a mountain. So fill in the gap there. Where has he come from the end of Seven String Volume 1?
From the end of
to
Volume
get
1,
here?
he is given a scroll, which as of yet you don't know the origin of it,
Yes.
truly. But it's a scroll of places he needs to go in order to discover more about how to make his sword and his song stronger.
Yes.
Because post the events of Volume 1, his sword was completely depowered from the events of what happened, and he needs to reactivate it and then also find a way to discover more about himself and what he's doing, where he's going next. And on that scroll is going up this mountain,
Yes.
which he thinks nothing of at first until it leads him into all of this. And either you can read into or not that he was always meant to go to the Empyrean, and that really is the case. That this was one of the places he had to go, and you'll understand who wrote that scroll and where he has to go, why he has to go to all of these places much nearer the end.
Oh, sweet.
That is all explained. But right now, it all seems very much like he's just following a scroll for no reason.
It's this funny thing where in many ways, we've shared a lot of the secrets about our worlds
Yes.
to each other.
We have, yeah.
But in other ways, we are holding a few things back because we're both fans of each other's world.
Absolutely. I don't want to know everything about what happens in your story.
No, and likewise, I want to see. I want to be surprised when these big reveals come.
Yeah.
But we've so far struck a good balance between keeping secrets, but also revealing information.
Absolutely.
And hopefully not treading on each other's toes, like when we do reveal stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
I got to write some fun little captions here.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to read them briefly because it's been a long time since I wrote them. But we have Zach saying, "There was a machine and this terrible noise like every sound in the world played forwards, backwards and sideways all at once. The air felt thick and heavy like a dream and the sky was bending in this weird way." And I think that is the most... you can't see me at home, but I'm doing quotation marks. That is the most comic thing I've ever read.
It is very sort of Stanley sensationalist, sort of, isn't it? Yeah.
It's like Fantastic Four just go into like some weird dimension and see random stuff. That was so much fun.
But I also really like that repeated and then, and it's all.
And then you just know what happens.
It's great. You don't bother describing it because you know the images will do that. But it's sort of that sort of thought process, and it's just great. It's really cool.
The subtle thing is how easy Requiem defeats Zach.
Yeah. He is an incredibly strong character, and whether we reveal to everyone listening how important he or where he's from is, which we probably won't do for now.
Well, we can, it's perhaps safe to say that there is more going on here than we reveal within the pages of the Heavenly Chord.
Absolutely.
But interestingly, one thing I always wanted to say in the, because I think I've said this to you, like when we're not recording director's commentaries, Requiem was one of the most fun characters I've ever been able to write. Like, his dialogue was just the easiest stuff to write in the world. Just to be pure insanity.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. And
very over the top, isn't it? And,
everything about the character, where he was kind of like, he fights with a conductor's baton.
Yeah.
I was saying in the script, like he moves like a ballet dancer.
Yes, very dramatic and over the top action.
Incredibly kind
graceful.
of like, limber. Because like it's a tiny little stick. It's like a wand, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he is in the context of...
And for that same reason, he was fun to draw as well. That same sort of balletic grace that...
And I guess technically he's like a wizard. In the context of melodia and musical...
Absolutely.
He's using a tiny little weapon and kind of doing musical magic by waving it. So...
Yeah.
And interestingly, of course, I guess he doesn't technically conform to any one of the clefs.
No.
Which is interesting as well.
Yeah. No, he's using everything for his own symphony plans.
Also, I think this is the first 2 pages where he's actually named.
Is he?
Because in his
found him Requiem.
Because on his first page he says, "I will be your Requiem."
Yeah, but you don't know then that that's his name.
And then he actually says, "Well, he's called
Because
Requiem."
of course this is framing when we turn over the page now the fact that Zach has basically been given a battle presentation to the assembled forces of Afterlife Inc. ready to go into battle.
I'm sure there's a smart term for that transition, but it's basically like flashback by means of filling in the other characters.
Very good though, very good, very effective. And I love this. What is an Afterlife Inc. anyway? That's really good.
I love the fact that like Zach has just given it, like we saw an awesome flashback, but to the room, Zach's just probably given like the most awkward.
Yeah, he said, and then the end of it was, and then.
Next thing you know, I'm trapped in this madhouse.
It's like, and then what? Where did you get your stupid like tuning fork sword from? What's going on?
And he just probably gives like the worst presentation in the world. And I love his facial expression there. He just looks legitimately
like
what the hell is like literally what is going on.
But this then leads into my favourite line that you've written in the entire comic.
Thank you.
Is a Zachary Briarpatch, expert consultant in this our latest apocalypse. That's just fantastic.
I just love the idea that this is what day-to-day life is like for
Apocalypse are a regular occasion for you.
We just like it's a very exciting job, I imagine, but it's also
probably
awful.
Quite stressful.
Yeah, it's just absolutely awful. And little subtle things here, like everyone's kind of
pretty psyched,
shook hands and kind of made up, and
but Lux isn't.
Yeah, like App is like Superman. Like you could punch Superman due to a misunderstanding, and then once you say no, Superman, I was doing it because
I'm a good guy actually.
Yeah, I was doing it to pretend, and he's like, good for you. And
yes, well done, boy.
Well done, and you kind of like shake hands, no hard feelings, and so App is happy.
Of course, App's happy.
Aykroyd, he's cool.
He's over it.
Lux gets a little.
But then Lux kind of is always like that anyway.
Yeah,
so.
And of course, weirdly, I guess handing the reins over here because Lux doesn't actually get to say a lot now for the rest of the story.
No,
I don't think she has a line later on, but it definitely goes back to being Jack and Zach's show. And
very much Jack, as he says, has introduced Zach as this sort of consultant who is therefore leading the battle in many ways. And so Lux's role as battle leader has become a little bit, jeopardised there.
Well, it was never meant to be like a slight against Lux. It
was
meant to be simply that this is a crossover, and the focus was always going to
have to be
on Jack and Zach. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
then we have our sort of theme phrase.
Our theme phrase, which of course, because we released it in 2 parts, a lot of people, having read the first one, never realised that we called back to this later on.
But now maybe reading it as a graphic novel, this sort of joke will be made. But we won't ruin it right now. But of course, you have spiky blue hair. I automatically trust your judgment is a fantastic line in itself, but isn't the only time that sort of thing is said in this story.
But then, of course, we end part 1,
indeed,
which was never really intended as a break point. But
not at the very first iteration.
It formed a very organic kind of cut-off point.
Absolutely. But
now we end up in an awesome splash of Zach leaping into battle at the head of Afterlife Inc's army.
Indeed.
And we have Lux. Mm-hmm. Very cool, Lux leaping into battle there. Looks awesome. App.
Yeah.
Our two brawlers.
Well alight with lightning.
Yeah, like Lux is like the all-rounder, like App is the heavy.
Yes, yeah.
And then, of course, we also get to see Nuriel.
Yes, which is the first time in part 1 that we've seen him, and the first time I've drawn him.
Another little fan favourite there.
Absolutely, and he plays a much bigger part in part 2, which is coming up.
He does indeed. So, we're going to take a little break now.
I'm really hungry.
This will be instantaneous for you at home.
Yeah.
But we're going to sign off, and then we'll be back in just a second.
Cool.